will expose, I will reveal, for you have entered into a time and a season of undercover, where I will bring out from the covers the truth.
Take 36. Welcome back, everybody. This is Dave, XRPLion. It is Tuesday, April 9th, and it looks like we all got through the solar eclipse, just as the Lord said, exactly what it was. It's about coming from exile into redemption. You're in for a real treat tonight. The Lord dropped this information. It was absolutely fantastic. So grab a pad, grab a pencil, grab a pen, grab your favorite beverage, and prepare to be amazed. We'll be back shortly. Get ready. Okay, welcome back. I hope you got everything that you needed to take care of taking notes with regards to this video presentation. And as always, my recommendation is the first time you go through this, just watch, just listen. They have found that there is better than an 80% retention rate when you listen first and you watch. Because that way your mind doesn't get distracted on one particular item. And while you're trying to write it down, you miss the next item. So it creates a fragment in your record storage. So that's my recommendation. But we're gonna get set here. We're gonna get going. But first, here's what I want to do. I just want to call out praise and thanksgiving to the Father for everything that He has already done. And I'm going to give you an example of what I just described. That's the key. That's the second key to the universe right there. But here's what happened. I was working to get the video out on the solar eclipse. And in the back of my head, I was praising and thanking Him for having already given me the information I needed to do a video like this. And it was just a flash in the back of my mind. Today, the truth in regards to what is a bond and the bonds and how they're going to be dealt with, as He has already had me provide you information on. They finally come clean without the disinformation, without the misinformation. And that's what I'm going to show you guys today. So if there was ever a time to understand what you're holding, you know, we've heard that in the digital asset space. Know what you hold. Hold only those that are ISO 20022 compliant and bag the rest, because they're all going to get locked up and frozen when the markets are turned off. And we've already heard from Brad Garlinghouse, 99% of the digital assets, well, I don't even want to call them digital assets, they're crypto. They're dead. They're not going through. See, if you put two and two together with what's been said, everything becomes crystal clear. And I'm so excited to be able to share that with you guys. Because every single time we put out information, it's truth. And you don't have to question that. But what we're dealing with is all of that pre-programming. All of that, I'm just going to call it what it is. Fear, false evidence appearing real, FUD. Anything to distract you. Anything to cause you to use your energy in a way that isn't productive. Now, the most productive way to use your energy, number one, continue to praise the Father every single moment that comes to your mind for everything that He has already done. That's how the fifth dimension works. That's why science has not been able to correctly identify the math, the formula, the process, because they don't bring the creator in, who's the father. It's no different than when you were growing up. Your mother and your father, having raised you from the point that you couldn't take care of yourself, they had to know and understand what you needed at all times. They knew that when you started to ride that tricycle, you were going to be on a bicycle. There wasn't any doubt. Your parents didn't at one point, late at night while you were in your crib sleeping, say, honey, I don't think Tommy or Susie is going to be able to ride a bicycle. No, I'm not talking about a situation where there's, any handicaps, but that never enters their mind. They know the natural progression. Now, if they know it as your parents, how much more does God know it? He is the source. And I pointed that out in the solar eclipse video. Without him, none of this would have happened. We wouldn't be here. So that's number one. Number two is stop following the fear porn. It's not what it's supposed to be. But yet these people continue to put it out. It's like a false prophet. It's like a pastor who is not teaching the word. And I don't mean he's not holding a service and he's not giving you what you need. When you're a new Christian, you're drinking milk like a new baby. But at a certain point, you need meat. And that's what has been missing. And I'm not just talking any old meat. No, I'm talking the best of the best. And that's what God has released. The best of the best. So whatever he releases, he wants me to release, I release it. Whatever he's shown me that I use in my own life, I provide it. Not for my benefit, but for your benefit. Why? Because iron sharpens iron. And there are people that I associate with that help me. And together we grow even faster. So I'm going to put that down. We're going to come back to this. I'm going to show you the best kept secret. And I've mentioned this before. When it comes to these historical bonds and assets, when it comes to the ZIM bond, absolutely the best kept secret. And my friend and I, Barry, we went over this in detail and drilled down on it forensically. And I obtained every single piece of information that I could, even from sources that haven't released anything to anybody else. Because it's so, what's the word I want to use, Lord? Monumental in terms of its impact, not only on us, but on humanity. See, these are the ZIM, I'm going to hold that comment right now so we can progress through it. So let's get started, okay? This is what you need to know about historical assets and bonds. Number one, the ZIM. What is the ZIM? The ZIM is short for Zimbabwe. And it has to do with their currency, which was devastated 2008 through early 2009. 95% depreciation. And yet these notes were sitting out there. And as I pointed out, it has a I promise to pay the bearer on demand. So it is a demand note, demand bond. But there's something very interesting about the ZIM, and I'm going to cover that. Number two, the dinar, the Iraqi dinar, the cabal, deep state, Khazarian mafia went in and destroyed their country for its resources for a specific reason. The dong, Vietnamese dong, same thing. These are the top three. The correct name is historical assets, historical bonds, which means historical bonds. And this means old bonds. So it doesn't say old currency. Now, which are in fact old currency notes and bills. Now, we're not going to emphasize this in relationship to a bond, because bonds are used as currency. No different than if you owed a debt or I owed a debt, and I said, well, I tell you what, I'm going to put my Lamborghini or my Ferrari up against that debt. Now, is that Lamborghini or Ferrari currency? Is it a note? Is it a bill? No, it's not. It's still a Lamborghini or a Ferrari. It's a pledge. So that Lamborghini or Ferrari becomes a value instrument because it wasn't printed. Okay? You get my drift here? Okay? Historical bonds are collector's items that the owners know will become valuable in the future. And there's a lot of them. Every country has had multiple forms of currency. You know, just like we've changed our bills over the years, so have they. And some are more rare than others. And that's why when we talk about the redemption, which is for bonds, and the exchange, which is for currencies, it's only applicable to certain issues. A bond is a promissory note from a government. Legally, it cannot be refused. So that debt is carried on that bond instrument. Historical bonds, when it comes to redemptions, they require a lot of work. Each case, the type of bond is decided by its merits and authenticity of the bonds themselves. See, that's why when I mentioned the ZIM bond and only purchasing through Banknote World, they have a program which guarantees authenticity. It's called the TAP program. And the bill is actually goes through a forensic analysis, makes sure that all the security protocols are included, and it's encased in plastic and numbered. Just the other day, they were all out in the morning, yesterday. And when I say all out, I mean the ones that we would buy, the uncirculated version, which had gotten down to as low as 109 and is now twice that price. So on-hand bonds are bonds that you physically hold. So if you have ZIM, you have dinar, you have dong, those would be considered on hand. Now, a bond is payable in any form of money or value or legal tender within the country of issuance. Bonds to use this currency are called value bonds and cannot be reclassified as the underlying currency. Now, this was a situation that was coming up in some of the intel reports. That's why I said stop listening to the talking heads. We gave them grace that it was misinformation, but we know it was disinformation. And they were specifically calling out the ZIM bond as currency, which was 100% incorrect. And I proved that. Now that's stopped. And now the proper information is being presented. And what does that tell us? It tells us that we are at the end of the road and that the redemption is right around the corner. Now, let's tie that into yesterday. God releasing that revelation that yesterday was the beginning of the redemption. And it signified through the Aleph, us going from exile, or the people of the second exile. And it was symbolic, everybody, okay? It applied to everyone in the world. It wasn't just about the United States. So we can understand that just because it was here and that was the focus, it applies for everyone in the world. Now, if we understand that, having just taken place yesterday, then the redemption process has begun. Then what does that mean? That's why I say get yourself right with God. That's number 2. Get it worked out. If you need to fall on your face and snot and bawl for half a day to let your heart release your sin nature, then by all means do it. Don't wait. We know that there's a, how do I want to put this? There's a state of being, a purity of heart that has no offense, has no bitterness, has no resentment, has no hate. And that's where we have to be. Not only as we prepare and walk into the redemption, but as we walk through it. Okay? Those that have already received Jesus, it didn't just stop at the cross. It began on the other side of the cross. Jesus paid the price. He opened the way for us to return back home to the Father. And that's all part of the redemption. The word redemption is applied to the conversion of our bond or bonds into legal tender. Gold, 100% gold backed in our Quantum Access account, our QUAC account, on the QFS. See, we don't have to do anything with regards to the quantum financial system or our Quantum Access account. And I know there's a whole bunch of scammers out there taking advantage of the innocent people. Now, Elon Musk came out the other day or last week and said he was getting rid of all the trolls and bots. Part of the redemption process. The global QFS currency reset is the redemption, not just includes the redemption. And it's on several value bonds used as currency, issued from nations with tremendous natural and human resources. The Vietnamese dong, because of their natural, mineral, and energy resources. The Iraqi dinar, for the same reasons. And the Zimbabwe ZIM and ZIM Bonds, because it is either the first or second most resource-rich nation, depending upon statistical resources, in Africa. Let me tell you about this. There was a book that the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe put out some time ago. And in there, they described the depth of their resources. And it stopped. Why? Because they didn't want that known. And it's very similar to what has transpired in the Philippines. They have the first and most resource-rich nation. And I'm just talking about gold than any other nation in the world. That's where the Asian elders have the spigot to the never-ending river of gold. But Zimbabwe has other natural elements, diamonds, etc. So here we have what we're talking about with regards to value bonds. In Zimbabwe, their currency was devaluing so fast that they still had the ZIM bonds being delivered from the printers in China. Now see, this is how they got out, because they weren't supposed to get out. I think they came from the printers, who were told to stop printing them. But see, when you make a commitment like that, you can't just say, oh no, these aren't any good anymore. And this is where the Asian elders stepped up, acquired all the assets above the ground from Zimbabwe, and then pledged a guarantee to pay for all of the redemptions for the ZIM bonds. Every one of them. They're even buying back the counterfeits at a much lower rate, but they have to purchase every single one of them and take them off of the market. And that's great for us. That's great for us in our humanitarian efforts. Just the other day, two days ago, and I put up actually on the 5th, that was 4 days ago, I posted this. The governor of Zimbabwe came out and identified the fact that they had just approved their gold-backed currency. And it's called the ZIG, which means Zimbabwe gold. Isn't that cool? And they have a 10, a 20, a 50, and $100 note. So this was required before there could be any kind of redemption of the ZIM bonds. So anybody out there that was thinking, what's the holdup? What keeps taking so long? Why are we getting these dates and then nothing happens? Well, what you're not aware of is the fact that 3 generations of governors or mayors or ruling party in Zimbabwe had to be taken out. And that last governor or mayor, it was maybe a month ago, where he was replaced with John, their new governor or mayor. And his name is actually on the currency. So historical bond payout amounts are based upon their assets, now gold, right, etc., and their established redemption rate. The ZIM bond redemption rate has already been published. Now, you're going to have to go find it. The Lord told me I can't provide it. But I will tell you that it confirms what I had already worked up, what I already had. So it was nice to see an official announcement that lined up, as there had been so much disinformation. But the Lord showed me the pearl, and that's what I've had for the longest time. So this makes the ZIM bonds ultra valuable due to Zimbabwe's rich resources. Now, I'm just going to go out and make this statement right now. When this video gets posted, there's going to be a run on the ZIM bonds. I'm just going to tell you that right now. And they'll be gone instantly. So if you have any inclination to want to purchase one or two, stop the video and go get them right now. Banknoteworld.com. I think right now there's free shipping, which means it's 2-day USPS. Make sure you're home when they deliver it, or somebody's home to receive it. You don't want it sitting on your porch. You don't want it sitting in your mailbox. It's worth millions of dollars. Now, with regards to the Humanitarian Initiative trusts, with regards to the humanitarian programs for the ZIM bond, I've prepared the only available template complete with video instructions. And most of you are already aware of that. Template's already been approved and is 90% completed. You can complete this and I'm going to give you 1 hour, 60 minutes. And let's just figure something out real quick. Let's just say that a ZIM bond was worth $1 million. What's 60 minutes worth? Let's do the math. Sorry about that. I had to look for my phone. I usually don't have it around when I'm recording. $1 million divided by 60 minutes is $16,667 per minute. $16,667 per minute is what it's worth. I think you can afford to take the time. The Lord's made this possible for you. He has me putting this information out there so you're aware of it. So run. Don't walk. Don't stop. You've got 5 seconds in your mind to decide. Because after 5 seconds, your mind will talk you out of it. It's proven. You're at work and you're having a great day and you're like, hey, I'm going to go to the gym. And then 5 seconds later it goes by and you're not out the door. You're not going to the gym. You get into the car. Oh man, I'm so tired. I just want to go home and eat and watch TV. Oh, I want to go get in the pool. Oh, I want to go shopping. No, resist. Fight the temptation to procrastinate. Fight the temptation to not follow the plan. Fight the temptation of letting the enemy talk you out of your royalty, of your legacy, of your future. I challenge you. I run into it all the time. But this is what I know. When you bring something of intention to your mind, the moment you bring it to attention, move. Get up. Even if it's just, I'm going to the front door. The moment you get up and move, you just locked it in. You're going. Now, you may have one or two more situations that pop up, but just do the same thing and get out the door. Get out the door. Because why? What happens? You get there and you're like, oh man, and you work out, and by the time you're done, you're like, man, I'm so glad I went and worked out. I just feel great. That's proven fact. So just do it, okay? The Historical Bond Redemption Program, HBRP, is an opportunity to redeem specific types of gold-backed historical government bonds. It's backed by the treasury of each country, and they will determine what they redeem, the order and timing, the price, and the redemption procedures. Now that would be for a global situation, right? We're not in Vietnam, we're not in Iraq, and we're not in Zimbabwe. But here, we have special rates of exchange and redemption through the redemption centers. And as the general public, that is the only place that we're going to go to exchange and redeem our currencies, that which is currency, and that which is bonds. So all this talk about going to banks is disinformation, which we're going to cover with grace and call misinformation because it doesn't apply to us. It's directed towards tiers 1 through tier 4. We're not the internet group. We're the general public. Now, outside of the issue of not having currencies or bonds, everybody over 24 goes to the redemption center as well, because there's other forms of payment. There's the Q phones. There's the Q laptops that everybody gets. There's the new rainbow currency. There's the checks. There's the debit cards. That has nothing to do with the exchange or redemption process. The real redemption process begins when we walk in the door. And then it's determined whether or not we're going in or going out. The richest bank in the world, Royal Bank of Zimbabwe. And as I said, now, as of the 5th, their currency is 100% gold backed. And because of that, that has now released the process for redemption. I mean, just think about all the little things that have had to take place. Getting a third generation mayor or governor out of office in Zimbabwe. So the right person could be put in. Now, these humanitarian templates, sorry, that bottom keeps popping up. If you look at the very bottom, humanitarian template, it's pinned in my profile on Twitter at the @ XRPLion, LION, numeral 1. And it's just the way it appears right there. Don't type it in any other way. There's a whole bunch of scammers. And when my page shows up, you can actually see everything on my page. And I'll pop it into the video and make it available so you can all see it. So here's what I posted with regards to the ZIG and what's transpired. The Asian elders put up the gold right here. All of that has made its way to back their new currency, the ZIG. So now the Asian elders gold funds the 100% gold backed ZIG, which at the same time becomes the instrument that will be used for the $100 trillion ZIM Bonds to be redeemed. So step 3 is we bring them to the redemption center, and it's part of our buyback. If we have currencies, we'll have our currencies and we'll have our ZIM Bonds. Here's information on the template. It's had just tremendous acceptance, and thank you. Thank you, each and every one of you. I spent a considerable amount of time and effort to make sure that I could make this as easy as possible for everybody. As long as you follow the instructions to the T, you're going to be just fine. Why? Because it's already been pre-approved. They know what it looks like. That's why you don't change the pictures. You don't change the colors. All you do is input the words. That's it. This isn't your creative project to show how well you can design something. That's not the test. Okay, this is a test. And the person that provided me with this template, the understanding of what needed to be on the page, told me, Dave, if they change anything on here, words, pictures, it's going to bring them into question if they can follow instructions. Because if you can't follow instructions, and again, I'm not talking about people that have ZIM, because you're providing proof of the asset, the humanitarian asset. But I'm talking about somebody that doesn't have any currencies, doesn't have any ZIM bonds, nothing. And they're walking in wanting to participate by having their own humanitarian project or initiative. And as Charlie Ward indicated, that they can expect at least $1 million for having their own program. So you use this too if you have something in your heart for a humanitarian program. You want to be able to take the elderly in your neighborhood to the med beds, to get groceries. Well, it's going to cost money, right? You're going to need a van. You're going to need supplies. You're going to need these things. And this is what he said. He said, if you can prove yourself worthy with $1 million, that means you follow all the protocols, you follow all the compliance, that can open up the door to up to $8 billion. You won't find a program like this anywhere. Nobody's talking about it. Why? Because they know most people really don't have the capability to do the right thing. Now, if there is any finagling, then people start to tap into this for their own personal reasons, they will be stopped. And it will be taken away. But for that person that has just wanted to do something. And as I pointed out when I was on the Nick Veneman show, I said, Nick, if you and I went to dinner tonight and money wasn't an issue, what have you always wanted to do? What's on your heart? I said, we'd have a 4-hour conversation. And it's true. I've asked people, hey, if money wasn't an issue, what would you do to help humanity? And I said, and I'm not talking about saving the world. I'm not talking about doing this grandiose plan. Because a wise man once told me, do not go anywhere until you go across the street. And when you go across the street to help, then you help your city. Once you're done helping your city, help your state. Once you're done helping your state, then you can consider going to other states. Then you can consider possibly going international or doing something outside the country. But remember, these programs are being made available to everybody in the world. So you don't have to leave the United States. You don't have to leave your city. You don't have to leave your state. There's plenty to do right where you are. And it doesn't have to be saving the world. It can be the smallest thing. And it doesn't mean it has to last forever. If you receive the $1 million and you use it up in 7 years, 10 years, then you've accomplished what you set out to do. Now, if you've stayed faithful, that opens up the door to more money. But you won't find a more complete program than this. I guarantee it. So if you go to my Twitter page, at XRPLion1, you want to make sure you see the verification blue check mark on my page. And again, here's what it looks like on my Twitter page. Because there's a whole lot of scammers, and I've got a whole lot of imitators. You don't want to be following these people. You don't. You want to make sure it's authentically me. And I'm not on Instagram. I'm not on Telegram. I don't email you from Gmail. I'm not on WhatsApp. I am 2 places. One, I post on Twitter at XRPLion1, and I produce educational videos on Rumble. The Dave XRP Lion Show. No place else. And that's available on my profile page as well on Twitter. So again, just make sure it's me. But again, I'm not going to communicate with you. I'm not going to ask you to send me digital assets. I don't sell anything. I'm not going to ask you to sign up for the QFS. I'm not going to tell you you need to move your money out of the bank onto the QFS. That's not me. Okay? And here's the full graphic so you can see it. Just follow the instructions. It's very, very simple. There's a 10-minute introduction video where I go through it and I just do it as fast as I possibly can. I think I do it in like 8 minutes and 6 seconds. And then there's the full instructional video that explains to you why you're doing certain things in certain places. And then lastly, most important, the strategy of the enemy at this time, and I've been sharing this message for probably at least 6 months, is to create a fence. That's his number one strategy next to stealing, killing, and destroying. And John Bevere has the only book I would ever recommend on this, so that you're aware of what it is. See, most people have no idea what a fence is and how the enemy has used it since the beginning of time. It's called the Bait of Satan. Over 20 million copies in use. I mean, that tells you something right there. John was gracious enough to allow me to provide a free downloadable link. So if you go to the bottom and you see where it says type in yellow, type in that address and it will take you to a downloadable PDF. So that right there saves you $20. But it's an easy read. I had one of my closest friends, when he saw me put this up, he went and got the download. 4 days later, he calls me on the phone and he says, Dave, I had not realized that for the last 30 years, I've carried a fence against my father. And he said, I'm so glad I'm getting rid of it. Because it's the smallest infraction that we could participate in that would separate us from God. And it's just like I've talked about Cain. When Cain killed Abel. And God came into the picture and said, Cain, you have to go. You have to leave. And immediately Cain, knowing what was going to happen, cried out to the Father and said, Father, you have to place your hand upon my forehead and give me a mark. Now that's been twisted by the enemy such that anytime we hear the words, oh, a mark on your forehead, we think of the devil. Well, it's because the devil is saying, doing what God did for Cain is the devil's work. And wouldn't that make sense? But here's the revelation on that. God didn't put a physical mark on him. Because what Cain said was, Father, you have to put your hand upon my forehead and leave a mark. Otherwise, they will kill me. Well, who are they? And when I was a younger man, I just wondered, well, who were they? Well, who were the first here? Satan and a third of the angels. And then from that, the Nephilim. So they were here before God's creation showed up through Adam. So what God did is God gave him the revelation of who he was, his identity, and what that meant. So that when Cain had to go and he encountered the Nephilim and the giants, when they asked him, where did you come from? He just said, over there. But their next question was, who's your father? Now this is where the revelation hits. He wasn't asking him, who's your earthly father? Because he would have said Adam, right? They were asking him, who's your creator? And he said, my Father is the one and only living God. And at that moment, they knew they were in trouble. Because in the scripture, it says, God told them in the scripture that anyone who would seek to kill or harm Cain would suffer the unrelenting release of his vengeance sevenfold. Now, for those of you that haven't heard this before or understand what sevenfold means, it doesn't mean 7 times. No, it's a progression. It meant 1 times 7 for the first fold, 7 times 7, the second fold, 49 times 7 for the third fold, 433 times 7, all the way out to the 7th fold. Well, here's the deep understanding in that. By the time you get 1 to 7 folds, it's 823,543. That was the number of Nephilim and giants on the earth at that moment. Because what God was saying is, any of you kill him or attempt to harm him, I will just clear you off the face of the earth. No one's ever revealed that. That was a revelation from God. And in the other side of that is his blessing from Proverbs 6:30 through 31, where it says, don't worry about the thief who breaks into your house because he's hungry. But once he's caught or known, he has to return 7-fold, even if it includes giving up his home. And that's what this restoration and this blessing is that God has prepared through Jasara, and all the other restoration provisions. See, God said everything that has been stolen, going all the way back to Adam, will be returned 7-fold. And that's why the number is calculated. That's why they're looking at how much you paid in income taxes. They're looking at every single thing. So this is just a fantastic opportunity for us to be made whole and more, and to be able to step into his economy, the quantum financial system, operating on the XRPL, with XRP as the master key, operating in the 5th dimension, where it's unhackable, where our money can't be stolen. Banks are only going to be around for a few years as they help transition people in the understanding of the technology. But they can't do what they used to do anymore. That's been stopped. They now have new capital requirements under Basel III. And with those capital requirements, any deposits that they receive from us coming off of the quantum financial system that go into a bank, they have to have the capital to cover it. Now, this is a revelation I'm about to release and reveal, and that is, why has Ripple got a stablecoin coming out? What would be the purpose of Ripple having a stablecoin? Here's what it is. If a bank falls short on its capital to meet customer deposits being covered 100%, they're going to tap into the global liquidity made available on the quantum financial system through XRP. And they'll have to pay for it. It'll be like a SDR, electronic SDR. So they can't own XRP. Nobody can own XRP. Why? It starts with an X. Means nobody can own it. Retail holders can't own it. That's why there's a buyback. Banks can't own it. because then they would have control. See? The provisions for governance with XRP as the fiduciary require it all to be held by the fiduciary. Not a portion of it. But this is how they make it possible for the banks to tap into the liquidity. So for example, let's just say that XYZ Bank, you deposit $100,000. They only have enough capital, which is their money, not your money. Customer deposits are no longer capital of the bank. They can't loan them. They can't do anything. They can't charge fees. But they have to insure it, right? Why would you put money in a bank if it wasn't 100% guaranteed? I'm not talking about FDIC or some promise to pay. We know that's BS. That's crap. But you want hard assets. You want gold, the equivalent of gold, to back what you're depositing into their bank. Otherwise, there's no need to put it there, right? You got a quantum financial card. You've got checks that draw right off of your quantum account. You've got a debit card. You can access cash right from the ATM whenever you want to. What are we using a bank for? A bucket? A blankie? So we feel comfortable? So I know some of it's there. Well, you're never going to see it. It's digital. And how long is it going to take people to realize that? About 10 times faster than it took Grandma to figure out how to use Amazon to start buying everything and anything she wanted. It's going to be so fast. That's why they maybe have a 3-year life. And they're over with. They're toast. Why? Because they're just going to tap into the liquidity. And they don't have to hold XRP to do it. So anybody out there that is thinking that, and this is misinformation that's out there. It's wrong thinking because they don't understand the quantum realm and they don't understand what was going on with XRP and how Ripple fits into the picture. Ripple can use the stable coin, if they want to, as the equivalent of XRP on the blockchain or the XRPL connected to the quantum financial system. Think about that for a second. They can't hold XRP. It has no physical form. It's digital. If they hold it, it violates the governance provisions that were made by the 7 kingdoms. But how about if we just give them a digital token issued through Ripple, the fiduciary? See, that makes more sense. That's why Tether was part of the cabal. That was intended to make it the bad bank in the digital asset space. So that's what takes down Bitcoin. That's what takes down Ethereum. And when I say take down, I mean everything just stops. It just stops and it's disposed of. So I know I kind of got off on a tangent there, but the Lord's telling me it was important to reveal that now so that you're prepared and you can begin to understand what's taking place, because things are going to happen so fast now. There just isn't time to try to catch up. So you have to capture the revelation. You have to capture the truth. And then begin to process it in your mind so that you're comfortable with understanding what's taking place. So that brings us to the end of this presentation. I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for your patronage. I want to thank you for being a warrior, for staying engaged in God's plan and his purpose for mankind. And with that, I love you, I bless you, and look forward to seeing you again very soon. Take care.